Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
Fantastic. Yes, we can. So, we want to just begin the talk, and that basically the essence is where is the yes in your life right now? And you could say, you can answer that question just from specifically today, or you could just say, in this stage of your life, where is your yes? How many of you have participated in have done improv? Anyone done improv here? Improv? Improv. Have you seen improv? Yeah. And did you ever do improv when you were a kid? You might have done it. Like, I realized I did it as a kid with other friends, but we didn't have a name for it. And so what happened was I was thinking about it, it's like this older woman in our community, in our neighborhood, and I realized she was like in 8th grade, but she was like an older woman to us. And she would come and she would give us scenarios, and the scenarios that we learned is you have to make up who you are, where you are, and what's the circumstance. So she would create these, and we would just do these we'd change partners, and it was so fun. It was all play. You had no self-consciousness. We didn't know it was supposed to be funny or not funny. It was just so creative. And we could do it for hours. It was usually the 8th grader who was just like, okay, I'm bored now, goodbye. But it was so fun to do. And I forgot about it because I've seen it as an adult, and I'm like, I would never do that. It looks so scary. And the scariness is you're going to make a fool out of yourself. Well, for me, in my head, it's like, oh, the pressure is I have to be clever, I have to be really funny, people are watching me, and I'm probably going to freeze. And so it gets really self-involved and self-conscious. So the joy that I felt as a kid where I had no self-conscious, and it was, by the way, everyone did it. It wasn't just like certain people did it. It was just play. It was just like a game. So improv is for everybody. And so there are many books out in the world about comparing improv to living. The 2 rules of improv are yes and. So what that means is you don't have to always say yes, but the first person creates you get the scenario, and then the person says, you don't even have to create a scenario, you just say a line. The other person responds by agreeing with the scenario. So that's the yes. But again, you don't have to go yes, because they said, it gets really rigid and formulaic, but you're just sort of entering into this world that this person just created. But entering, so it's an acceptance. Really what the yes is, an acceptance of this world. The and is then you move the story forward. So the and, I'm going to give an example in a minute. So the and is yes, and then you get to add your thing. So that's a really important aspect of improv, that you just don't go yes and then just stare at each other. And in many ways, when I ask you, what is the yes in your life right now? It's not just what do you yes to theoretically, but what's your and? Like, what are you bringing to the table with your yes? What is, the and is kind of like the forward motion, the action step. So you're saying yes, and here's what I'm going to do, or here's how I'm going to participate, and that's what keeps the flow going in your life. It's an extraordinarily creative process, because in that yes, you allow Spirit to move through you. So an example of being in agreement with what somebody says, but at the same time turning it around, I was listening to someone interviewed Tina Fey. I guess she had just come out with, I don't know what year this was, a book about improv and connection with life. And he said, well, let's do it. And he said, freeze. I have a gun freeze, I have a gun pointing at you. So she immediately accepts the reality, but she doesn't go in the way he probably thought, which is that she accepted the reality, but then she didn't go, oh, don't shoot. She says, you have the gun I gave you for our anniversary? And she was so happy. And it so totally flipped the story, but she was still in agreement. So that's what we can say. It's like we always have choice. It's not when we say yes and I accept the reality given to me that therefore I have to follow along the lines that we expect. But at every point we have that creative option to go yes, and da 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 da. And that keeps the flow moving along. Isn't that wonderful? As we look at life this way. The guy who was interviewing her had never done this before, and he didn't really know the rules. So she said, yes. She said, the gun I gave you for our anniversary. And he said, no, we're not married. That you don't do in improv. Because what that is the moment you say a no or but, you're not in acceptance of the reality that the person just gave you. And so it just stops the story. So when we just go no, the story's over. And when we say the story's over, that creative energy stops flowing. We all know the creative principles, right? That we stand in that infinite possibility realm, and we allow it to move through us, and then we get to add our piece to it, and that allows that energy to keep flowing. It's not that the no is bad. We'll get back to that in a minute, but the no is not bad because sometimes the energy does need to be stopped. Sometimes you're like, yeah, no, I'm not playing in this story. I don't even want to contribute to the creative flow of this story. We might feel that way about some of the things happening in our world today, right? So we have to decide what stories we want to play with. Another aspect of improv, and I was watching various videos on it, and it was interesting, they all said the same thing, which is it's really scary. Like every time you enter into an improv, and they didn't have the fear that I had. I'm like, I'm not going to be clever, I'm not going to be funny, people are watching me, and it was all self-absorbed stuff. What they were saying was scary, is they said the moment you accept what someone says, and you're in a dance with them, you have no idea where this is going to go, and you have no idea what they're going to say, and you have to continue to play. We've agreed. So you go in this flow, and they say every time it's like a complete revelation, and that's where all the humor comes, but sometimes it falls apart, but you just keep going. You just allow it to unfold, whatever it is. And like most improvs that I've ever seen are always short improvs, but Amy Poehler actually started an improv group, which I never heard of, but they did full-on, like a 40-minute thing. So it just kept going for 40 minutes, and they kept it going. And she said that was a whole nother experience, and she said of all the vehicles that she does, that's her absolute favorite, is just to stay in that creative energy. And she said it's so creative, and you're just so out there, and you're so trusting one another as you're following this energy. What we want to do in life is also follow that energy, but that, again, is from the light within us. This is a quote I just saw recently, and I loved it, and I didn't want to take time to memorize it, so I brought it up, because I feel like it's so important for us, and it's by Reverend Charles Hall. Those who are in the prayer class, this will be familiar. The God that was given to you by someone else is not your God. Your God, the real God, introduces itself, I love that. It introduces itself to you right from the middle of you. Isn't that great? The God that was given to you by someone else is not your God. Your God, the real God, introduces itself to you right from the middle of you. So we're all living this extraordinary life on earth. And we have this presence, this power of pure light that's inside of us. And it's always pushing us. Well, there's two elements in our life. I feel like there's two ways to be how we want to approach. There's times where we just really need rest and healing. There's been a lot going on. Life has been crisis. Everyone here has gone through periods of just a lot of crisis, or you've just been working really hard and you're exhausted. So at that point, you need healing and rest. And that's a way that the divine presence is going to say, it's time to nurture yourself, it's time to take care of yourself, find the ways that work for you, so you're saying yes to self-care. And so we want to be paying attention to that. And in the wellness world today, we hear a lot about self-care, because a lot of times we're so big on the forward movement that we forget to take care of ourselves. So whether you're in a crisis or just tired, to listen to that yes that says, you know what, it's not time for me to be doing all this stuff. I need to take care of myself. And there's also that time of our life, which I think is a lot of our life, which is creative and expressive. And what I have experienced about listening to this light is it always takes us into a place we've never been before. And that's why I think I really, as I listen and watch the improv, it's so exciting, but that's really what life is. That if we just either are saying no all the time or we're saying yes, but we're not doing the and, our life can feel stagnant. We can feel like, yeah, I got this, it's familiar, but nothing is really moving. And, I don't know, I thought Jack was over there. There's a word, doldrums, that's what it is, the doldrums in the water. Did you hear? And when you're stuck and you don't move, and it's like it's not peaceful, it's like, it's kind of like death, and that can happen in our life. So we have to listen really intently and be willing to do the and as well. I have gotten no's, and they've been very helpful. One of the no's that I received was a couple years ago. I thought, I think I'll be a professor. I spent a lot of time thinking about these things. That's for me. So I went over to the Graduate Theological Union. I'm getting to know the admissions director. I took a class. I audited a class. And I'm thinking, oh, this could be. I'm really liking it. I love learning, so I'm back in the learning situation, being the student. It's awesome. But then spontaneously, all these people from different areas of my life were saying, oh, Harriet, you're going to be 60. This is not the direction you want to go. This is a long journey. It pays very little money. It's competitive. Cutthroat was the word I used. And there's so much politics, and you're just starting. I don't think, and I kept hearing that from different people. And then as I was driving to this class that I really liked, in Berkeley, the PhD students were picketing because we have no money. And then I read an article about the UCLA PhD students, and they're sleeping in their cars because they have no money. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm getting a no for this. And so in a no like that, so I'm not going, oh, well, yes, and I'm going to do this. It's no. Like, no, this is clear. I thought it was a great idea. It's what I'm getting, because everyone's different. There's sometimes other people are getting a no, but you still have a yes. But I was pretty certain, yeah, this isn't the direction for me. It was kind of a cool idea, but it didn't have a lot of depth. It was just like an idea. My point, I guess, with that is I didn't just think it. I took some steps towards it. I did the and, because by going to that and, by taking some steps towards it, it made the no utterly clear. I'm not sort of still thinking, well, maybe I could have done this, or maybe I don't have any, it's gone. It's like not in me anymore. And it's that because I went towards it. So when you say a yes, the and doesn't mean, like I say, you can change it around. It doesn't mean you are forever committed to the original story, but it helps clarify where we are. So yes, and follow through, oh, I got a no. This was a case where I listened to the no, and I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you've gotten a no, but you just keep going anyway. Man, it's brutal. Don't do it. Just very clear guidance. I'm like, yeah, no, that seems really hard. I think I'm just going to keep doing what I want to do. Because it's familiar. I mean, isn't that what we do with our lives? Sometimes that's why we can stagnate, is because like this is so familiar and I can just keep doing this and I know how to do this. But I know that I've gotten guidance in something else, I'm just not listening to it because it's so unfamiliar and different that I avoid it. I'm saying about me, but I'm grateful to hear that every one of you I saw nodding, so I'm not alone. So we want to hear that and be willing. Part of that, though, so if you get a guidance and it feels like I hear it, but I'm not ready for it, remember this presence within us absolutely loves us. It's not here to torture us. It's not here to kill us. It's here to bring us to greater life. So, I'm not ready for it. Maybe I take a little step in that direction. Maybe I just go, and it's just barely noticeable. And then you keep doing those little steps until you're ready. Okay, maybe I can try. This presence is creative. It wants to move through a vehicle that's saying yes. And if it's guiding you to a yes, but you're not ready to do that full yes, you take little steps. This is how we can live a wonderfully adventurous life. I tend to like people that live like this, so I get Jesse Ithler's newsletter every week, and it's okay. But this past week was perfect for our talk because he was talking about how he has lived his yes his whole life, and it's given him the whole spectrum of experiences. He said, he's done everything from, he had a business that he sold to Warren Buffett for billions, and he said, I've been on stage and been booed off of the stage. I was on the cover of a magazine because he tried to go into hip-hop as a white dude in the 90s, and they said, is hip-hop being ruined by white dudes, and he's on the cover? And he said, I've had the full spectrum. I've been so embarrassed so many times. One story, I don't want to keep thinking Jackson. He told a story, it was just recently, he was telling a story of, I guess he had written a jingle for the Denver Broncos and they had won the Super Bowl, so they were having a big Super Bowl party in front of millions TV, and they wanted him to come out and sing his jingle for 2 or 3 minutes. I don't remember the story, I just remember being horrified by it, because he said, something happened in about 2 or 3 minutes before he went out. He peed in his pants, and this is in front of millions, and he goes, I had to go out and sing with peeing in my pants. And his wife is just, oh no, don't tell that story, Jesse. But the point is, what he was saying is, because I am chicken, just so we know, so I need stories like that to remind me to have a little courage. To be willing to go, oh, this feels unfamiliar, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I could totally screw up. I could be saying yes, and it just totally fails. And that would be humiliating and embarrassing. And his whole email is like, he says, I've been embarrassed so many times, and all I've done is become freer and more myself. And I have to remember that. And so I'm offering that to you as well, that when I ask you, what is your yes? What is your cutting edge right now? Well, your yes may be to heal, but if it's not healing, not but, and there might be a place that it's pushing you beyond where you're comfortable. You know your own self, how comfortable you are with discomfort. And so we get to gauge ourself. I can't do what Jesse Ithler does. He's bold, crazy. Just was a week of this. Simon Sinek, who has a podcast. He's a very interesting guy. So he was gone and he came back. So his first guest was Matthew McConaughey. And of course, Matthew McConaughey loves to take chances and risks. And it was interesting. By the end of it, the two qualities that Simon was, as he was listening to all these stories, because they didn't seem all the same, he said, I thought you were it's like you're a big risk taker. He said, but really, even behind the risk were two things. Was this profound curiosity. Like you couldn't just go, I think you want to experience it because you want to understand it. Because as you may or may not know, he writes poetry. He's been writing journals since he's in junior. He's just completely curious about all these different aspects of his own soul and the world out there. And so he's constantly exploring. And it seems like he has a lot of courage and a lot of risk-taking. And what he was saying is, no, I'm just incredibly curious that it pushes me forward. And so that's one way to be with your yes. If it's pushing you in a way that feels very dangerous or scary to you because you may not be the big risk taker, you say, but am I at least curious enough to take a few steps into that? Because we go back to spiritual principle. The presence is within us, and it is always good. It is always good. It is always love. It is not going to be guiding to us that anything that's going to destroy us or hurt us or be harmful. It is only guiding us. That is light. The light within us is only guiding us to know and experience greater and greater light. And it's unique for each and every one of us. We each have to be introduced to our own divine presence within us and listen to it and trust it, just like you would the closest intimate relationship that you have, where you feel safe and you can trust. That's what we want to feel about this guidance within us. So I think about what's happening in our world. And I think, I'm guessing that most of us, I'm hoping, are on the same page that what's happening in Minnesota is just horrifying and awful. And there's just story after story after story, video. And they're not just stories, they're videos. They break your heart. The administration keeps doing, and it's not, I mean, Minnesota's just so bad because you see it. Administration, just all the games that are being played, and it just feels so dark. Really, really dark. So where are we with the improv with that? You know, Ernest Holmes said, wouldn't it be great to have people who are only for something and against nothing? And I've been thinking about that because I'm very clearly against what's happening up there. And when people are yelling at the ICE people, stop, don't do this. And you hear and I've watched so many videos. Not so many, but enough to get the energy coming at. There are people who are pushing back very strongly. And I'm just sort of, at the same time, I'm like, I want to be one of those people. But then I'm watching, I'm like, well, I don't know if this is true, I haven't kept up, but on my news feed today, there was a skit on Saturday Night Live last night where Pete Davidson was playing the new guy going up to Minnesota to change things around. And he said, the skit was, look, we're not changing our policy. What we're going to get really good at is how to not be caught on camera. And I'm thinking, I wonder if all this yelling is really impacting them, because we're on the idea that we're all on the same planet and we're working together for the highest good of all. I don't think the people who are doing this feel like we're part of their story. They don't care and it can fuel sometimes that pushing back. I think it's important to push back, but I'm just looking at it from this consciousness place. And what happens, what I read a lot about in spiritual circles, is calling forth Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And I'm more familiar with Gandhi because I read his autobiography, so it was a first-person account of all. It was about most of it took place for 20 years in South Africa as he's learning these principles of nonviolence. And there's no question he was doing so much inner work that even as he's very, very clearly making external actions account. Like, he wasn't just peacefully protesting, he was provoking, but always from a place of inner peace. He really worked so hard on himself not to have any enemies inside. So even as Britain was the enemy in terms of they need to get out, they're bad, but at the same time inwardly blessing them and holding them in the light. And so I'm thinking about that, what's happening now. Because I'm thinking, if I just were to watch, or just, you don't even have to watch, just get into constant conversations. Oh my gosh, did you see this? That was terrible. Oh, that was awful. And we just keep talking about it. It's not impacting them. It's filling my inner world with so much darkness, so much negativity. And how is the beautiful light of spirit, there's no space for it. Because this darkness that I'm filling it up with my agreement, because what I'm agreeing to is how awful this is, and it's impossible. It's like I feel helpless, I feel hopeless. I don't know if anyone else feels. Do you feel helpless and hopeless when you watch it? Just like, what can I do? And so I go into a place of helplessness, hopelessness, darkness, negativity. That is not a creative place. No new life is going to come from that. The creativity, as Amy Poehler is saying, is we're constantly creating something from nothing, comes from within and from the light that transcends all of this. And I can't access that if I'm continually talking about awful and telling the stories and the pain. And it's not being compassionate to anybody. When I worked in a psychiatric hospital, I didn't go around And you couldn't stay in that environment if you just go, oh, this is so bad. Did you hear this? Oh, this is awful. Did you? Oh my gosh, I feel so sad. Like you couldn't, you're not a healing energy then. You're just going into the story with them and just going, oh, it's so bad, it's so bad. I was so invested in constantly doing the work on there's only one power, one presence. It's the greatest power here. That all this, I accept that this story is happening. I do agree that people are in incredible pain and some of the things they've gone through just so sad and so painful. I agree with that but at the same time, and the divine power and the presence is greater than all of this. Truth, light, peace, harmony, love. That is greater than all these stories. And I'm going to constantly know that even as I'm hearing the story. And it's this constant work of, yes, this is terrible, and go into that and then put feet on your faith. And so I'm going to, when I'm talking with somebody, I'm going to see the wholeness and the perfection, even as I feel nothing but compassion for what the story is that someone is telling me. And my heart feels and aches with them, and at the same time, I'm holding the power and the presence of pure spirit. And so I'm taking those experiences, I'm taking this idea of and as such a creative energy. Yes, as such a creative energy that we have, all of us, because we are made in the image and likeness of God, and we are the divine creative vehicles of pure spirit, that we are being called to be these creative energy, to be this healing light by keeping our consciousness attuned to the divine presence first, foremost, Alpha and Omega and everything in between. It doesn't mean we shut out the world, but we just can't live there because we cannot be a healing presence to anyone else if we are not being that light presence in our own world. Yeah. And I'm grateful those claps because I think that's where it is when we have this collective consciousness of holding this light, feeling the compassion, but holding this light that it is more powerful than everything. And that sometimes when we get in the conversations with everybody about how bad it is, if we could go and, not say but, because it's true, all that horrible stuff is bad. And the power and the presence is right there with them. And we go into a collective agreement when we're in these conversations that God is greater than all of us. There's a light, there's a power, there's a joy, there's a love that is greater than all this. We start being not just single creative energies, but this collective creative energy in all of our different conversations. Every time we come together, we're being vehicles to allow this new light to be born and birthed on earth. Gandhi said, when we die like we lived. When the assassin came up and shot Gandhi, he said one word before he died, instantly. It was just on the tip of his tongue. He said, Ram. That's an incarnation of Vishnu. That was the prayer that he was constantly working on. He wasn't perseverating on all the bad things that were like, oh, these are bad people, and they didn't that. He wasn't perseverating on that. He was, that means repetition. He was focusing always on the divine presence within, calling its name forth. So even in the moment when a crisis happens, when he gets shot by a gun, that's the first thing and only thing that comes to his mind, to the tip of his tongue as he transitions. We die how we live. Where is your yes right now in your life? Where is that yes and in your life? We know the story, we're getting a lot of different stories externally to us. And you might have it in your family, you might have it at your work, you might have it in all these other various venues. Where is your yes and where is your and? The yes is saying, I'm not denying the reality, and I'm just going to share one other story very quickly. It was something I learned, and I think it really grabbed me when I heard Ram Dass say that. He was telling, let's say Gandhi said, we die as we live. Because I was a chaplain in a hospital for a very short time, for just a few months when I was in Grand Junction. And I was sitting, and I was being asked, you sit at people's beds as they're making their transition. And one of a woman, I was sitting at her bed, and she'd been a doctor her whole life as an adult. And she was an atheist, essentially. And as she was getting ready to transition, the fear that surprised herself, because now it wasn't theoretical, now she's actually making this transition, and she's like, I'm wondering if there is a God, and I'm going to go to hell. And I was so surprised, and it was so intense, and she was so full of fear. And as I'm sitting, I'm praying, and I'm giving her like a whole nother context, like this God is unconditionally loving, you're not being punished, all of the things, and it had no impact. That fear was so strong, and it was like she was holding on, like so not wanting to die, and it felt like such a painful way to move into the new life. On another occasion, I was called into, to someone else's room who was getting ready to make the transition, and this person was a Christian Science all his life. So the first thing I thought is, oh good, I can do a treatment. I walked in, his whole family was surrounding him. They're all holding hands. He has the biggest smile on his face. I was so touched by it the whole time. So I just went into a treatment. It's a prayer that's familiar with them. So you could just feel, and the entire time, he has a smile, and there's just so much joy in the room. And I remember thinking, wow, what a difference of transition. We die as we live. The more we're in prayer and holding that, whether it's a crisis situation, whether, the people who are in Auschwitz or in prison, it's what they say yes to, and the and is how they survive. It's what keeps us alive and full of life, allowing this infinite light to move through us even in the worst circumstances, and it allows us to move into the next dimension in a whole nother consciousness. So this isn't just about a moment of history. It's about our life, your entire life's journey. Yes, and it allows for this incredible light to move through us in healing and creative energy. It allows us to connect with one another. The thing that I love as I was listening all about improv is we're playing with each other. We're doing this dance with each other. And we're feeding off of other people's yes and we're moving and grooving with that wonderful creative flow. And in that, I believe with all my heart, is the vehicle for our own healing, the people in our own world, and the world itself, as we continue collectively to say yes, and this is the steps that I'm being called to do in alignment with that yes. So this week I invite you to really be with what is your yes right now in your life, in your heart, in the God in you. What is your yes? Listen to that. That's the most powerful place you could come from. What's your yes? And what's the and that goes along with your yes? Yes, and what does that mean for you? What is it pulling you to do? To pray? To reach out? That divine presence will guide you. Let's pray. And when we pray, our prayer is a yes. We accept. We open our hearts, our bodies, our minds, and our souls and accept that there is a lot of challenges in our world, maybe in our own lives, maybe in the lives of family and of friends at work. There's a lot of challenges in our national culture, in our world culture. There are challenges. We see that. We don't deny that. And we choose to know that the power and the presence of pure spirit, the power of pure spirit is greater than all of these challenges. The divine peace, the divine healing, the divine joy, the divine harmony, the divine abundance, the divine love, all of it is already fully orbed. It is not becoming, it already is. It already is, and we just breathe in that isness. We choose to align ourselves with that presence that is greater than anything humanly we could do. Of ourselves, we cannot do this, but when we align ourselves with that, which is the creator of all creation, and say yes to it, to moving through and as our heart, our body, our mind, our soul, new life is birthed. We are becoming what we've never been before. We are continuing to enter on this extraordinary journey of becoming in new ways that Spirit has divinely ordained to happen through each and every one of us. It is divinely ordained to birth itself through each and every one of us at this time, at this place, and how grateful I am that the divine is always saying yes to itself and finding its fulfillment and its way, newly discovered, newly lived, newly delighted in, newly shared, each with each other. We share our yes and with this beautiful community, with one another in every area of our life. Yes, and so it is. Amen.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all that I say.